Welcome back to part 2, everyone. I hope you've enjoyed part 1 so far. It looks like we only have a little bit done, but that little bit is very eye-catching, I think. We're going to move on to this big church on this side. We'll finish all this side, maybe get the wall done, and after that, all we have is some reflections. So we'll be doing some lovely reflections in the water coming down. It's going to look fantastic. I hope. Thank you for joining me. Let's paint a building. We'll concentrate on one big building. It may not be everyone's cup of tea, but if you're trying to get to grasps with buildings and shape and light and shadow and making something look kind of 3D, so to speak, this will be interesting. It might help you, okay? Let's crack on and have a bit of fun along the way. Thank you so much, and do subscribe if you haven't done so already. Do subscribe. Let's share the channel and get more people watching these tutorials, because there's so much to be learned from these, I think. Okay, enough of me blabbering on. Let's go. Let's have a bit of fun. Okay, my friends, let's do this. Let's crack on through this church. You should see the reference photograph up there, and I zoomed in slightly on the church a little bit, so just to give me a better view of what's going on. So I'm going to start by just shading in you see the background in behind all these pillars. So you have a background in there with doors all the way along. I want to paint in all that dark surface first. Alright, I'm going to take Phaylo blue, and I'm going to take magenta. It's a very rich kind of a blue in there. It's, I think a bit more magenta. So a nice kind of a pinky, purpley shade. It's probably a bit more blue in this, but I think I'll start off warm like this, kind of a warm blue. I'm just going to go the whole way and paint everything. I want to paint all of this all the way along. And I do know by looking at the picture, my building needs to be slightly wider, so I can make it wider. I'm going to go up at an angle with this. A little bit more magenta, and the thing with this is I'm kind of fine-tuning the colours as I go, so I'm adding a little bit more pink in if I feel it needs it, that kind of thing. It's a tricky one to do. Maybe a hint of burnt umber as well, just mix it in. It just kind of adds a little bit of different shading to it and so on. Then probably a little bit of black. I could put a little bit of black down towards the end, soften it up here and there. And again, that goes back to what I say about grading. You see the way it just has a little bit of a darkness going through it here and there? I kind of like that effect when I'm painting buildings like this. It just makes it a bit more interesting, I think. Now let's go again. So we'll go in underneath where the doors are, the front of the building. This may be a little light, the shade I have here now. Maybe a touch of burnt umber. Burnt umber just, it softens the blue. It makes it more of a grey sort of a shade. You understand what I mean? It's good, I think, good practice to practice your greys using blue, brown and red, because they do give you a wonderful variety of colours. So I'm just going to keep carrying on now, mixing plenty of this colour, so I don't have to keep going back to my palette every 2 minutes. A little touch of brown again, a touch of white. I'm just going to go with this kind of soft grey for now, and we can add to it then. Alright, so let's just go under all of this, fill this in. And I would suggest you to try this when you're painting your buildings, because what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to imagine that these pillars are not even there, okay? Let's pretend they're not there, and we're just painting the front of the building. Let's go again. I'll take some more magenta, blue, a little brown, getting a bit more on the pinky side now with this. And you can see how I'm using very thin mixes. There's a good reason for that, because if you go right in with a very thick mix, it's going to be difficult to add colours to it afterwards. It's going to be very difficult for you. So I always start off with a very thin mix at the beginning, and I build up my layers slowly. Okay, there we go. A bit of light over on that side, and if it all filled in, I must put more of an angle on this up here, just to help a bit more with perspective. Now I'm going to take a little bit of black and a tiny bit of blue. I'm using, again, very, very thin mixes for this. I'm only using the bare minimum amount of paint, okay? I'll come down here with a bit of a shadow. Now I am going to make this building very similar to what we painted earlier. I'm going to, in terms of, I want to be very loose and impressionistic with it initially, and then when I get towards the end, I can then sort of add in a bit more detail. Does that make sense? So for me, right now, I'm thinking the most important thing for me right now is getting the shades and the colours blocked in just right. Getting those colours right is important right now. Okay? That's the important thing. That's what I'm worried about right now. So I'm just going to get all these kind of colours right to a certain extent to what I want. Once I have them done, then we can sort of, you know, let's go for a smaller brush. And let's add some colour to the top peak. You see that peak up there? Let's add a bit of colour into that. Let's go and paint that. Okay, bit of blue, bit of pink, bit of white. And again, maybe slightly on the blue side. Let's go up and paint this in here, look. Once we have the basic shapes done, then we can go in on detail. But I always say this, for me, is the most important part of the painting, of any painting, getting these shades right and getting the shapes right. It's very important. We have our peak in, and I know there's a lot to be done. There's a lot of light and dark to be done on this now as well. I can see that. But I'm just kind of concentrating first, as I said. Just let's concentrate on getting everything filled in and covered. I hope you're learning a little bit about painting buildings in this tutorial. I know it's not a landscape, and I normally do like to paint landscapes, but I've been wanting to do this for a while, and I thought it might make a nice tutorial as I'm painting it. Why not just press record and record it as a tutorial? And I think it would be nice for you to follow me along on this kind of journey that I'm taking with this auction and this charity. You know, I think it might be nice for you to follow me along and see the process of how I do it, you know. It's nice to do something for charity every now and then. I think it's a good idea. And it's great for getting yourself out there as well. That's another bonus. Because I don't kind of concentrate too much on selling artwork. If I sell artwork, it's great, but it's not my primary reason for painting. My reason for painting is because I love painting. And that's the way it should be, isn't it? Now, a little bit coming out here, but we don't have to show that too much. I can just bring it down a little bit and turn it in, just to suggest that there's something else at the back. Now, I'm going to start softening my greys and deepening my greys. I'm taking some burnt umber with some black. And I'm going to just kind of start going in, let's say in underneath the front canopy. It's dark. There's a dark shaded area in there. And I'm going to soften that down. I'm just going to pull it down in areas just to give that idea that it's kind of deep and dark up under the shade up there. I should probably use just a larger brush for all of this, but look, I have the brush in my hand now, I might as well use it. Isn't that right? So that's coming on quite nice now, isn't it? Okay, a bit of black, a little bit of blue, a bit of mauve, going for a deep, deep pinky grey. Right under here, I'm going to go nice and dark. Right in under there. Now I'm coming down at an angle, bringing it across. And you see, I then start, once I have all of this filled in, we'll say, okay, I can then start putting in details. So one of the details I can see is this darker shade going across the top. Okay. So we could get those lines in. They're simply lines. That's all it is. They're just lines. And if you're worried about getting them straight, you can use a fine pointy brush as well if you like, and a ruler. Alright, I just find with painting, it's much nicer sometimes to just grab a flat brush. Now I'm going to add in a lot of lights. I need some blue and a lot of white. I'm going to start putting in some nice bright highlights here and there. So, for example, across the bottom here, there's a nice bright highlight going across there. And you can see how simply I'm doing this now. It's just a few lines. And we have a nice bright on this. And they will all stand out later because I'm going to be going back over a lot of this this church with strong colours later on. But I'm just getting right now the brighter sections in. I'm going to put a bright section down here. Because remember, a lot of this is going to be hidden in the background behind the pillars, you see. I'm going to switch to a slightly wider brush because I will be able to get much better results if I use a wider brush. See, sometimes you think using a pointy brush gives you more accuracy. Sometimes it doesn't. Here, for example, there's a nice bright shade popping down like this, okay? I'm going to bring that down. Now, a little hint of Naples yellow helps. You see how that light colour catches the sunlight. I'm also going to, and I'm kind of jumping across now back and forward to different colours here. Take a bit of light blue and bring a little touch of light blue down the back here on the shadow side. And I'm also going to add a deeper blue with some magenta down here. It's amazing how much blue you would see in a painting like this. You know, in a building that should be grey, when it's in shadow, there's an awful lot of blue in there. It's amazing, isn't it? So I'm just kind of going over now, adding hints of that blue. And you can kind of start to see it come together, can't you? I'm going to put also that kind of blue up here. And it's amazing because when you stand on the roadside and you look at this church, you don't see blue. It's just a grey building, okay? But when you're painting it like this on a painting, these little bits of blue are going to stand out absolutely wonderfully. A bit of a roof coming across here. I'm just going to pop that in. So this tutorial basically is probably more about painting shadows on buildings and getting shapes of buildings right and that kind of thing. It's probably more about that, I would say, than anything else. But if you can learn something, that's fantastic. You know, whatever you learn, everything that you learn will help. Now just bring that across there and out, and then we'll return this, bring it over the side. So I'm using my flat brush for all these little lines. Sometimes the flat brush is the best for this type of thing. Now I'm taking a bit of blue and a bit of black, and I'm going to come down here with a shadow which is being cast by the eave up there. Okay. We also have a nice rich shadow on the right. So I'm going to take black, blue and some magenta, plenty of magenta, and down here I'm going to cut across like this, and I'm going to soften that all the way down, okay? Creating just a little shadow being cast, just a small shadow. And when you're looking at something like this, okay, you may say, God, there's a huge amount of detail in this. This is too complicated. But if you simplify it, you can just simplify all of these kinds of paintings. Just look at where you see some dark. So I can see a dark line up there, so I'm just going to put a dark line in. Does that make sense? And also it's very dark across under here again, so just reinforce that colour again. Do you know what I mean? There's lots and lots of, it's just lots of lines basically. When you're painting, just think lines, especially with buildings. You know, 90% of painting a building is just painting lines. Let's put a light across here now, start building up our highlights, and this is the fun part. This is where it all kind of comes to life. This is where it all starts to come to life. Let's crack on now and start getting some proper highlights in with all of this. There. I'm going to bring a nice bright down here. Okay, and I'm adding plenty of phthalo blue into this mix. All right, we've got a little bit of a light there, and we have other suggestions of lights following that angle. Okay. Now a bit more blue, and I'm going to highlight a few little sides, a few little angles and pillars and all that kind of thing. I'm just going to highlight them in the dark. So everything is kind of being pushed back into the shadows, as it were. So I'm using deep blues to push all these pieces back into the shadows. Now let's start building up our painting. Let's start building up this church, okay? I have basic kind of stuff done that I wanted to do. There is that statue up on top all right. We could, I suppose, tip away with that. Let's just put a square. Now you might not see this, but I can. The square, do you know what? Let's go for a bit of a darker colour. And let's just suggest a little statue. There's some kind of a statue up there. Look, okay, now. I can't really see what the statue is. I can't really see it. It's a statue. So let's just make an impression of a little statue up there. Let's go for some white and just pop a little bit of white around here and there. Okay, so we've just created the impression of some kind of a statue up there. Again, we don't want to see detail, we don't want to see exactly what it is. It's just a suggestion, of course. Now, some more white. Put a little white down under here, a little bit there. All these lines are giving you the impression that there's stuff there, there's something there. Again, we can't tell what it is, but we know there's something there. And that's the trick. That's what it's all about. The power of suggestion. For example, along here, I'm going to just put a load of little dots, okay? Now, up close, it's just simply a lot of dots, isn't it? I'll put a little bit of white then next to some of those. But when you step back, it gives you that impression that there's little things up there, you see? Small little things going on. Let's do some doors. Once we have the doors painted in, it's going to really make a difference, okay? It's going to start looking like a proper building. I think I'll start with some burnt umber. There's a door over here, look, let's put that in. Just a square, a simple square, rectangle. All right, again, more burnt umber. We have a very tall one here. And these are very tall doors, very tall double doors. All right, they're probably 20 or 30 feet high. I'll just try and get them reasonably horizontal. We have another smaller one here. And another one at the other side. Now they are off centre, I can see that. But not to worry, we have loads of pillars of stuff coming across here which are going to be covering a lot of this. So you really don't have to worry. I'll just make this one wider on the left just to compensate for it being off centre. Now, let's start picking up black. I'm painting this directly over the brown, wet on wet. We have a little bit of a roof coming off of this one. We have small little kind of lintels going across over these. So we'll just put little hints of, again, little hints of detail across over them. We have little light grey surrounds going around some of these. But I'm going to use a light blue. That's all. A simple light blue. And that gives you the impression of a light grey lintel in the shadow and a surround. Now, you can see how it's developing slowly, isn't it? All very slowly. It's bit by bit, it's coming out. And that's what I want. I want to kind of create that idea of very loosely suggestive detail. Then we have a tiny dark black line just around some of these. Now I'll be very honest, I'm hardly looking at the reference photograph too much because I want to make this sort of unique and on its own. I'm not going to spend too much time looking back and forward at the reference photograph. That's what I mean. I'm going to take some Naples yellow and white, and I want to just create lots of very bright highlights across here. I just want to thicken that up there. And I'm also going to brighten this. You see how that little extra bit of light just brings it out? And the same over here. All in all, it's coming on. It's coming on slowly. I'm fairly happy with this. I put a little dark at the back of that just to suggest this is the dark side over here. Okay. Now I'm happy with that. I'm going to start doing the pillars. The first little hint of Sienna in here, maybe a hint of Naples yellow actually. Maybe there's a hint of a light catching some of these. Okay. Now I've one or two small little things that I need to do, and then I'm moving on to pillars. Just a couple of like dark lines across here and there because I must remember when I start painting these pillars, I can't go back over any of this. It's going to be very difficult. So I just want to get this right before I move on. A bit of dark up there. A little bit of dark here. So I guess we're probably ready to do some pillars, although I might just grade and just add a little bit of darkness here, ever so slightly, just in under here first. Bit of brown. Now, my friends, we are ready to paint some pillars. I think I'll try my flat brush. When I get the pillars done on this, then that's part 2 of this video finished. Okay, I'm going to just go right in and start with some white and a hint of blue on my flat brush, and I'm simply going to go like this, trying to be as straight as I can. It's not perfect, but it's okay, it'll do. 1, we have 2 here, just get them painted loosely like this first, and we can then go over them again. Okay, that's slightly wonky there. 1, 2, there's 6 there. 1, 2, 3. Okay, clean the brush again. Keep cleaning. 4. 5. And one more out at the end, 6. Now, how is that? I just have enough battery power, I think, in my camcorder to add some shadow some of these. So I'm just mixing up a very rich purpley shadow again. And I have 17% left in my camera. I might have enough just to bring shadows down on these. That's one. Two. Three. Number four. I'll take a bit of black as well with this one. Again, mixing another small little bit of shadow colour. Number five. See how all this is just very loose. Now, I'm going to some black, maybe a bit of brown. We could just darken these at the very back with some very dark colour. And I need to kind of blend these as well slightly as I'm going. So I will probably use a palette knife to finish these in the next part of our tutorial. So some of the darks are in. Then we can just simply add some lights in the same way with some Naples yellow and white. And it'll be a nice little impression of the church. And you can see mistakes are easily fixed. So, how was that coming on so far? Now, you see, okay, it might look very flat, but I can just take, say, a palette knife, all right, some white, some Naples yellow, and I could just go like this as well. Drag the paint off them. But that's another way of, you know, getting fine sharp lines on stuff like pillars, etc. It's another way of doing it. But you know, I've no problem just making this very loose, very kind of suggestive. It's absolutely fine. Now, I'm just going to go like this. Just to give it a little bit of texture to the pillars and to separate them from the background ever so slightly. I'm just going to try this technique, just scraping it together with a palette knife. Now my friends, I'm going to call that just finished for now, okay? We'll come back to it. Let's just zoom back slightly and see. And that's not bad, is it? It's eye-catching enough. It's, you know, we'll do little details on this later. We'll work a bit more on this side and add little features to that. But all in all, I think that's quite eye-catching, isn't it? And there we go. And we have part 2 finished already. Isn't it just amazing how quickly these things come together? There, you can see it better there now. That's quite nice. It's very loose. You know, I'll work on details later on. When I'm finished the painting entirely, I can go back then, once some of this has dry, I can go back in with a very small fine pointy brush and just add tiny little details to make it look softer, maybe a little bit more refined. But for that right now, I'm happy enough. I'm happy enough. We'll continue on over here in part 3. We do the tree, we finish the tree, finish this wall and get the reflections finished. Okay? I hope you enjoyed the tutorial. I hope I haven't bored you too much. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you greatly for your support. Thank you kindly. And that's it. Let's crack on with part 3. I'm eager to get this finished. I'm pleasantly surprised. Okay? That's what I'll say, I'll be honest. I wasn't sure it would turn out quite as nice as it has. So I'm pleasantly surprised. I hope you've enjoyed watching. I'll be right back with part 3. Don't go anywhere, my friends. Take care.